Okay, so hopefully this will be really quick because we already talked about this stuff before we started the break. So I'm going to jump right into it. This is for Unit 3, the first quiz in Unit 3.3. So this is on economic challenges, which is the Great Depression. Okay, we already talked about that extensively. So hopefully this should be just review for you guys. So first thing I wanted to review for you guys is the causes of the Great Depression, which is not right there. Okay, so some of these are basically mostly thought of as causes. Stock market crashing, high tariffs, the policy that we had where people were overspending and allowing people to buy on credit, unequal distribution of wealth. So we have people who make a lot of money and people who make only a little bit of money. And then overproduction from all the stuff that we have been doing with industrialization, bam, 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 get it all out. And then everything just came crashing down. So these are some of the causes of the Great Depression. During the Great Depression, one thing that happened was the Dust Bowl, where basically there was a huge drought in the middle of our country, and it should show you a picture. Here we go. And it caused major sandstorms throughout the middle of our country, ruined a lot of crops, a lot of farms and businesses went bankrupt, and a lot of people had to move west in order to secure a job. They just sold whatever they could and moved, hitchhiked on west to work at jobs in the fields out there. We talked about people, mostly young men, who were basically rail riders. They were riding the rails, where they would just hop on a train and go to a different town and try to get whatever job that they could. When there was no job there, they hopped on a train and rode to a different town and tried to work there. Sometimes there were jobs that they said, hey, come ride this train, we're going to take you to these places where we're going to give you work, and so they would meet them there. So that's just one thing people did to try to survive in the Great Depression. A lot of separation of families happened. You'd have a lot of older children who would drop out of schools to work so they could try to support their family. And a lot of people would leave their family for years to try to have a job somewhere. President Hoover did try to do some things to help, but he didn't do a lot, and it was towards the end of his term. By the time that he was up for re-election, he did run for re-election, but the Great Depression had gone on for 2 years, and people just didn't think that Hoover didn't do enough. The reason why they thought Hoover didn't do enough is because he was a Republican, and it was a typical Republican ideology to say government should not have a hand in business. Business should run itself. The market will stabilize itself. So he didn't think the government should be involved, which is a Republican theory, and that this is just not what people wanted at the time. They didn't want to hear that at the time. So he did not last long. This is one thing we did not talk about, but I'll talk briefly about it. The veterans after World War I, they were promised a bonus, and they promised that their bonus would not be paid till like 1940 or something like that. I can't remember what year it was. And they said, well, you know what? We need money now, because it's Great Depression. They need money. So there's like, we need our money now. You need to give us our money now. And so they organized this huge march to Washington, as you can see in this picture here. And they marched all the way to Washington and said, give us our money. We want our money that you promised us. Washington actually had the military actually came out and tear gassed and took down people's tents that they had set up outside the White House. And I think a couple of people got shot or killed. And then they all left, and no one got their bonus money for a couple years after that. But they did start allowing some people to start getting their bonus money from being a veteran earlier than initially planned. During the Great Depression, because capitalism just wasn't seeming to work, I mean, obviously things were crashing down. So communism actually became very attractive at this time, meaning that people were like, we want a way for people to be equal. There's too many rich people who are having it just fine, and us poor people are here working our butts off, and we're dying because of this. They didn't like the unfairness and the inequality that was happening. So communism was definitely looking good to a lot of people. A lot of people joined during this time, especially African Americans. They were, which is funny because of the racism that was happening in the 1910s. We just talked about that in the last videos. It just, they wanted things that were more fair, and communism was offering that, you know. So and then also this just adds to the racism that happened in the 1910s, was because people are now desperate. Now they're looking for people to blame. They're looking for an outlet for their anger and their frustrations. So definitely racism just gets even worse during this time. You've got people who are blaming the Jews. Does that sound familiar? Something that happened, you know, for World War II. People are blaming the Jews here for the economic collapse that happened here. Go figure how that is something that worked out. So anyways, you guys remember most of it. That's basically just a little review for the Great Depression for your quiz, the first quiz in 3.3. So